Okay, well, I'm Corey Alexander. For those of you that do not know me, I joined Physician Women's Soar just as soon as it came out, and I am really, really excited today to be here in Worley, Idaho, with our candidate for the month of April, Paulette Jordan, who is running for governor of Idaho. And I cannot say how honored I am to have the opportunity to be able to interview you. This is really exciting for me. So I wanted really just to start with why on earth are you doing this? Well, we're excited, but I really want to hear your motivations.
Yes, and thank you for having me. I think this is fabulous that you have this organization of women physicians who are doing this and being so sharp about how you're collectively raising your voices and utilizing your resources to help other women or other leaders who are progressive and like-minded. So thank you for this. And yes, it's an honor just to be recognized. I think for those people who wonder why a woman like myself is running for governor, I would say because it's needed. Mm-hmm. When I was thinking about this years ago, because people were asking me back then, would you consider running for higher office? And I thought, well, you know, it's tough. I'm busy. I'm a mom. I got so many things to do. I'm also a businesswoman, so I have to pay the bills. And mm-hmm. It was a challenge at that time to think about. But years passed, and I figured the best way down this pipeline is to get as much experience as possible. And so I ran for the Idaho House for the second time. And and that's the thing. You have to temper yourself. You need to know the system. You need to get to know your fellow legislators and people across the country. And that's the ultimate key to this election is you don't just run because you have the money. You run because you are an experienced leader and you know the people. I'm from here. I'm from rural Idaho. I'm from a community where there are a great amount of needs, mm-hmm. Needs that have not been addressed for many decades. And on top of that, you have folks young and old who have been frustrated by a government who has left them out. And because I was raised by this community of folks who have been frustrated and disengaged, these are the people that I am fighting for, to represent and to ensure that their voices are heard in the State House.
And that's just wonderful. I know from my participation in this group that we are a group of women who are really trying to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. And that's what we need. That's what we need to be doing. Yes. We have several crises, I think, here in Idaho, several issues, and I had talked with other people in the group just to kind of fine-tune the issues that we discuss. I think one of the biggest issues that we face in Idaho is the lack of fairness or the indiscrepancy in the population in being able to access medical care. Obviously, in the rural areas, we have higher, illness rates, higher morbidities, higher mortalities compared to the urban areas such as Boise. What ideas do you have to address that? It's a crisis across the state, and I think not just in this state, it's nationwide as well.
Nationwide, yeah. And in fact, it is one of my pillars. I've always proposed to expand rural access to health care, and that means opening up more clinics. Right. I come from tribal council, and we focused on our own rural clinic, and we've expanded generation upon generation, and it's nice to see us be able to get to this point where now we can serve a lot of folks from eastern Washington and western Montana and going all the way to central Idaho. Mm-hmm. So what's nice about that is we can offer these services for the people in rural Idaho, but it also points out a greater need that the state of Idaho itself needs to step up, mm-hmm. do its job, ensure that everyone has access to health care. And right now, you mentioned before, Reclaim Idaho, we have people making and creating this exchange, but having to create this movement because of the fact that we have a governor who currently sits in the State House that does not want to expand Medicaid, that does not want access to those who are caught in the gap, this health care gap that we see that many Idahoans have faced. And unfortunately, it's more than just about coverage for rural Idahoans. Mm-hmm. It's about coverage for every single Idahoan. And of course, we want everyone from our veterans to folks with disabilities, our children to still have access to the CHIP program. Mm-hmm. We want Medicare for all. We want to ensure health care for all, and this means universal mm-hmm. health care. And that's where we want to go eventually. At this point, we want to continue to chip at the ACA to improve the system. And right now I have elders and relatives that I know in my community who are still facing high needs in healthcare.
Right.
We have primary care in this particular part of our community, but it's not for everyone. And there's a lot of people that I know that, especially young women, who have to rely on telemedicine.
Right.
And thank goodness we have telemedicine to help those folks in more extremely rural areas. But we can do better, and this is why we have to focus on really maintaining what funds we do have. So every dollar that Idaho gets, we have to prioritize it towards education and healthcare.
Right, right. And I mean, you're aware that Idaho does not have a medical school, does not have a place for people to get medical training right now.
Yeah.
And I know that that's been kicked around. Well, I moved to Idaho in 1995. They've been talking about opening up a medical school in Idaho since 1995. It hasn't happened. I mean, what thoughts do you have about that?
There's a lot of conversations that have been swirling around about medical school in Idaho and how that would be feasible in a state like ours. I like the WWAMI program. I want to see us expand the WWAMI program. Having the experience of just the challenges of retaining medical providers in rural Idaho has been difficult to watch, because you have medical providers come in, they stay for a short period of time, and then they leave. And what I see are the people at home who are left behind devastated, because they establish a rapport and that trust, and then once they leave, then that trust is broken.
Right.
And once it's broken, it's hard to mend back. And those elders that I know, or the younger folks that will go in for certain needs, they'll often feel challenged or, again, left behind. And so I want to make sure that doesn't happen. That's why we need to focus on growing our own. And when you grow your own, you have more loyalty, and you have that intergenerational understanding of people who get your area, your community. So that's what I love about the WWAMI program, and certainly want to see it expanded. But how we can ensure some medical school can stay and be productive or profitable so that it's able to stand on its own would be an area where I think we need to study, and then work with folks like yourself who have been there and working on this issue. And I don't know, I guess one of my areas that I think is really more challenged is, because I'm not a medical provider, I will tell people I'm not the professional, but I'm going to listen to the professionals to see where we should be heading. And if it's a medical school, then let's go there. But let's make sure that it's the right way for us to be. As far as how we're going to build a partnership with the Northwest, we have a strong relationship with the University of Washington.
Right.
And of course, we have many other schools around us who are servicing the needs of our students, and then they're returning home. So let's continue to study this, because I want to make sure that we're doing everything right.
Right, yeah. Well, I wanted to ask also about, the opioid crisis and the epidemic that we have, overdose deaths, and large numbers of people in Idaho who are living and working, under the influence of opioid medications and other drugs. I mean, in my view, what I see day in and day out in my office, it's a crisis. It's been a crisis that's been evolving for a very long time. And again, I want the state to do more. If elected governor, I mean, how would you approach it?
Yeah, once governor, I definitely want to hit it on the head, because I have a complete frustration with the issue by and large. One of the main concerns I have is watching our people die from overdose on a daily basis.
Right.
That's why it's a major concern to me, and I'm happy that many people like yourself are taking this to the forefront, because when I started, when I first announced as governor, this was one of the issues that I brought up that we need to be talking about, which is nice when you have this platform, and other media outlets are taking hold of it and starting to raise the question, and I'm even raising this concern at all of my town halls. So, one, we have to deal with the opioid crisis directly. That would be one, looking at your local clinics. Why are the medical providers utilizing this as a drug to address the ailments of the people?
Right.
They should be looking at holistic medicines. We should be making it easier for holistic medicine or practitioners through chiropractic care and of course through physical therapy, have access and support at the federal level and be built in to our structure in Idaho.
Right.
I know providers here at home, they've talked about how they're not built into insurance plans. Let's build them into the insurance plans. That way, patients can utilize their services. The other issue I have, too, is why are we allowing the opioid industry to continue to flush these drugs by the millions into our communities. I know their business plan. Their business plan is to attack rural populations, people of color populations, especially reservations in Idaho or across the country. So these are issues that need to be addressed, but they hit home hard because we have folks who are not only, well, you know, it's unfortunate because I don't like these stories, but dying from overdose, but those who are addicted to this drug. And once they're addicted, these become high costs for rural communities. And I've seen the cost, and they're in the millions and sometimes the billions. So this is an industry that is making a ton of money off of the backs of rural and high impoverished communities. So yes, this is a major issue that I want to address.
And I mean, you have so much courage to come out and say that so openly. I just love it. I just really want to tell you. I mean, as a physician, I mean, I graduated from medical school in 1986. I've seen this happen over time. It's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, and how I was taught to prescribe opiates is very different than what's going on right now, and the influence of the industry, and it's killing our people.
It is, and one of the challenges was for me, though, what are we going to do about it?
Right.
And it's not just about blaming anybody. We're not going to blame our medical providers or the clinics and the prescribe, nothing. People thought, let's go after the pharmacies. I says, no, it's not even the pharmacy's responsibility or fault. It goes down to the opioid industry itself. And so for me, I've decided how we take action is, and kind of going back to an old saying of one of my elder mentors was, you hit them hard in the pocketbook. So we're going to go after them directly. I helped create this consortium to represent both the states, municipalities, and the tribes. And we're going to go after the industry hard. We have firms from California to New York, and we're representing all of these folks who are filing MDLs and formulation as a class action settlement.
Right.
We're going to go after them as hard as possible. So this is an effort that I'm part of because I want to make sure that we not only hit them there, but we want to make sure that we also prevent them from flushing more of their drugs into our communities. So you got to stop it where it's leaking.
Right.
So that's where we want to go.
The source, yeah.
Yep.
What ideas do you have to address the need for addiction treatment in Idaho, which is another astronomical need?
Yeah. Addiction treatment, you know, that takes money. But to me, it goes back to education. This is why you have to look at your youth and where are they? I mean, we have a high rate in suicide here in the state. We're fifth in the nation.
Right.
So why is that? You know, and why do people look to drugs to treat their ills and depression and their troubles? So when people are frustrated, why do they look towards drugs as an issue to deal with that? I don't feel that that's a source of need for people to go to fix their problems. So that's where addiction is stemming from. You know, people utilize it to just be a Band-Aid, you know, for a deeper need.
Right.
And I know that because I have relatives who have been in these places and people in my community, and I watch them fight this addiction, many addictions. And so I think, one, you got to deal with that through the community. I always feel a personal responsibility when we have folks in our community who are struggling. I don't feel that it's on us to rely on the government to treat the needs of the people. Granted, we can service the needs. As governor, I can certainly look to creating programs, expanding behavioral crisis centers, and ensure that we're not sending people to prisons, making sure that they're not stuck in jail. This is how we start looking at prioritizing funding so that they can have access to programs within their health insurance or programs within the local communities for, let's say, local hospitals or rural clinics. But those needs are so great that this is where I think that we have to start looking at how we're addressing it. Right now, we're sending people off to prison because of drug addictions. We're overflowing in our prisons.
Right.
Just because of most of those people who are on drug addictions. And some of these people are not able to get off on good behavior. And so this is where I think that we have to address the criminal justice system, reform, provide more public defense, really address one of the problems that we have, which is not facing our constitutional responsibility, which is to finance our public defense system.
Right.
So when I think of all these things as connected pieces, when I'm looking at people who are addicted to drugs and how we're going to address it versus how we're addressing it at this point, I want to make sure we keep them out of the prison system. I want to make sure that they're in the communities and becoming effective citizens of society. But if we're not able to get to the core of it, which is, why are they depressed? Why are they dealing with these issues? What's going on? A lot of that to me stems from the home. A lot of that stems from lack of education in the state. Why are we deprioritizing educational needs?
Right.
Why are we not expanding folks like yourself in the system, supporting psychiatry and behavioral health, mental health therapists, and really allowing your profession to build into the schools, and then not expecting our teachers to be
right.
everyone in one.
Yeah. Right.
So I think this is how we can build on the needs of the people in a positive way. So restructuring it so that we are promoting your class in your profession into the schools and into the communities. We have one person in our rural clinic. We need to do better. We need to make sure
right.
that there are more. So that's how I look at us addressing the needs of folks with drug addictions. But I think it's just getting to the root of the problem and looking at the issue deeper. Why are they in these positions?
Right.
Why are our youth committing suicide? And why are people depressed and looking to drugs to address the need?
And I mean, what I've observed for the years that I've been in Idaho, and I first moved here in 1995, is again, there's a reluctance on the part of the state legislature and the governor's office to commit both the personnel resources and the financial resources, and that's been going on for many, many years. Very frustrating, which is why we're also excited that you're running for governor,
right.
because it's it's a crisis, and
Yes.
we're losing our communities.
Yeah.
One of the other issues that was discussed in our organization was, of course, the local media and the attention lately to the whole issue of gun violence. Mm-hmm. And lots of people had questions about your positions on that. And I know I saw you in front of the State House on the live stream speaking to the youth in Boise. How would you approach that problem local here in Idaho and also nationwide?
Yeah, I stand firm in favor of gun control. I am a gun owner. I support our culture here. I was raised in a very rural society that is strongly balanced with subsistence hunting and fishing. Yet we have to be responsible and accountable gun owners, and I've always promoted that. Even as a mother of two sons who are hunters and are gun owners themselves. But we do so responsibly. It's a culture that needs to be maintained where we're accountable to each other. I just spoke to an assembly of high school students, jam-packed in this gym.
Wow.
And then right after, of course, we spoke on the steps of the Capitol. But right before that, I was talking to them about gun ownership. And I asked how many in that auditorium were gun owners. Nearly every single one of them raised their hand. Gun owners, kids. Mm-hmm. And that's Idaho.
Yeah.
That is Idaho. And so the culture that we have to maintain and permeate throughout is responsibility, being accountable to each other. So the way I addressed it to the students was the same. Let's be good neighbors. Let's love our friends and be responsible for them. So if you see them having a hard day, struggling with schoolwork, or maybe how they were treated or being bullied, let's talk about that. And, it's on you. Mm-hmm. It's on you if something happens. Just know that it's up to all of us to be accountable to one another and treat each other responsibly. But I think that message got across. Mm-hmm. A lot of the youth came down who didn't even want to be there. It was a mandatory assembly, but right. Many of them thought that was perfect. That was spot on, and thank you for saying that, because I'm a gun owner, but I'm worried about the shootings, yet I know that it is on us. And thank you for saying that it's not up to the government to decide how we should mandate laws. And and I said, well, if we push gun control, which is sincerely just making sure that we are registering our guns, that we are making sure that we have universal background checks, so that we are preventing the guns from being in the hands of the wrong people that want to hurt us. Let's go there. Let's make sure that we're holding everyone accountable. It's not saying that we're taking anyone's guns away. No one wants to do that. No one's saying let's prevent you from your Second Amendment right. And in fact, you have a governor here that wants to make sure that we're all protected. I want to make sure that even like myself as a mother and every other parent in the state, they can feel safe and secure when they drop their kids off of school and know that their kids will be all right. For me right now, I don't feel that way. Right. I know that there are a lot of parents in this boat who feel that their kids aren't safe going into school. So yes, security needs to be heightened. We need to make sure, though, that we are, again, talking about this gun culture. And I think as a state who is seen as a gun state. Right now we're seen as a Second Amendment right state, and that's fine, but again, let's be accountable to it, and let's be the most responsible gun state in the nation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the issues,
but I do want to respond to that, because you're kind of leading into the stand your ground, I think. Was that kind of one of the
I'm
issues?
aware of that.
Yeah.
I didn't think that passed the legislature. Is it still there?
No.
It did not. It did not make it through committee.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
that's good news.
Yeah.
No,
No,
I'm
and
familiar
that
with
was one of the, I think, the issues that came out, because before I resigned, it was a bill that came up as an RS, which
Right.
is not a bill, but it was just a draft of a bill. And so I come from an area where everyone wants to strengthen their gun rights, essentially, and they're concerned about not being able to defend or protect their property and their family if there is someone who wants to trespass on their property
Right.
and do them harm. So a lot of my constituents were reaching out to say, please have this hearing. I would love, I mean, we know where you stand, we know that you're not in favor of this bill, but please allow me that due process and my right to be heard. So in fairness, I reminded people that while I'm not in favor of the Stand Your Ground law, I am firmly in favor of fairness, and I've always touted fairness in my last 2 terms and in this campaign for governor, because fairness is really where it should be about, and this is true justice for all. Everyone has the right to be heard, but that's all about transparency and ethics.
Right.
So me walking my talk, I said that's why I voted to have the hearing.
Right.
And it wasn't for the bill.
Right.
And I think that was the unfortunate rumor that was
I didn't
rolling
even
around.
hear that controversy, so I'm not aware of that, but I was aware of the bill and that it didn't get
Yeah.
out of committee, and that there were some concerns about what effect it would have. One of the things that I want the women in my group to know nationwide is where Idaho is with preschools and funding for early childhood education, which is, and as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, that's one of my passions. We have all this wonderful data that if you put children in preschool, they don't end up going to prison.
Right.
And the two things are related to each other. I mean, that's well established in our literature. And I'm aware that we don't have publicly funded preschools in Idaho. We're one of the states that do not do that. It would be my hope, of course, if you were elected governor, that would change as quickly as possible. But
Absolutely, yes, it will.
what was your experience with that whole issue in the state legislature? And again, I'm trying to help people who are viewing this really understand what we're dealing with in Idaho, because we need their help.
Yes. There's a lot of pushback because Republicans, they think that most of our folks in Idaho are wealthy and have the resources that they need to pay for private schools like Montessori. And that's not the case.
Right.
Most of the Idahoans that we have are parents who work more than one minimum wage job, barely making ends meet. I'm a single mother of 2 sons, and it's a challenge. If I did not have a school that my relatives had created on the reservation that was funded by the tribe, we would not have early childhood education, nor would we see the benefits of what an early childhood education would do. My sons were reading early on. They were proficient in language, alphabet, numbers, shapes, everything before kindergarten. By the time they graduated from this early childhood school, they were already well proficient in literacy and language arts, and they were meeting the levels of 3rd grade school curriculum. So they were very advanced. Unfortunately, this is not what Idaho provides. Most of the legislature did not believe in funding this program, let alone funding kindergarten. So this is where we're at. But this is the challenge. So as governor, it would certainly be implemented into my proposal for the next 4 years. I certainly want to see an early childhood education program implemented into our school systems, and that's what we need to ensure that education is provided for everyone. And this is what I mean about providing a world-class public education. We want to make sure that we create a pipeline system from age 0 on to their professional year. And that's how we're going to better Idaho. We have to start at the outset of their birth.
Right.
But it doesn't end there. But this is our opportunity from 0 to 5 to make sure that they're out of this other pipeline, which is the pipeline of our prison system.
Right.
We have high recidivism rates, high unemployment rates. We have with our people who go into prison because they struggle to manage to get back into society and be functional and stay out of the prison system. So I know that we have a lot of families who are hurt by that, and I know that if they had opportunities for early childhood education, that would certainly make a difference. But this is where we need to invest. not in the prison system.
Right. Okay, I have some general questions just about what's going on politically with, first the step in the primary where your opponent is A.J. Balikoff, who ran for governor in 2014 and did not win, and what it's like to be a progressive Native American woman in our political system here in a state that is a red state. What lessons have you learned? How are you going to approach the primary? If you win the primary, how are you going to approach the general election? And what's your game plan?
I think this red state has been a red state. Well, I should say no, this red state has been a red state, primarily because the people have been fooled for far too long. And when people are fooled into believing a certain way and they're fed the lies of the people that they elect, they learn better. I think right now I know and see that the folks who are represented in the State House and our governor, they have learned that they cannot be trusted. And now they're looking for someone they can trust. They want someone who comes from their community, someone who has shared their experiences and stories, and comes from their way of life and shares their values. That's how I got elected twice in my own district, that people consider a very red district. But I feel that this is how we change Idaho for the better. We eliminate the two-party system that's kind of really strongly beholden to the way people see politics. And I think that, I know that this is how we get above and beyond. As a progressive person, leader of the community, I've learned that rural values are ultimately what is our stronghold as a society. I know that people who have been born and raised in Idaho understand these values, and people who come and move into Idaho know and learn about these values, and then they're in awe because they see how beautiful Idaho is, but they want to see more of it.
Right.
It's not playing out into our political structure here. So that's how we fight back. We fight back from the people at the ground who are here working hard on a daily basis, who are raising their children, whether it's rural Idaho or urban Idaho. So the structure is to share the message that you have a candidate here who has a shared value system that was raised by Idaho, will fight for Idaho, and is sincere, is not beholden to corporations, is not one who is beholden to the parties, wants to fight for the people and do what's right. And if they knew the community that I come from, I was raised by elders, I was raised by my neighbors, and the people who, by and large, are Idaho. And I think that is what makes this unique. And so there's no real political strategy. I'm not buying anybody. I'm not tricking anyone. There's no lies. When I talk to folks, it's always just the same message. Just this is who I am. There's no hidden curtain and puppeteer behind that curtain. And I think that when people know that you are the real deal, the leader who speaks from the heart, and you are in the community day in, day out. I've rolled my sleeves up and fought for the local schools and helped build rural clinics and really make sure that everyone's safe. I have kids here that aren't mine but are mine.
Yes.
Every single child in Idaho is my child. So I want to make sure that they have the best, and that's how I feel about every next generation. I think that ultimately is the strategy, if there is one. It's basically just to get to the people and help them know, to just help them understand what this vision is for the next 4 years and beyond. Yeah, and that's how we win over Idaho.
Yeah. Well, it's just my hope that our organization can do everything possible to adequately fund your campaign and give you what you need, because, your message is just absolutely awesome. It's just absolutely heartwarming. I feel so honored to have been able to do this interview in this beautiful part of Idaho. We're actually in a gorgeous riding barn here. Surrounded by hay, and it is just a wonderful time to be a progressive in Idaho, and I want to thank you very much.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. This is great.
It's been fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk more about the differences, too, at the national level. I'm watching the exchange happen right in front of our eyes, but this movement that we've created is fascinating, and I'd love to see our young people build into this, even from high school.
Yes.
High school, college, and on.
Well, they're getting the message that if they want to be listened to, they're going to have to stand up and speak for themselves.
That's right.
Which is wonderful. It's wonderful.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great.